Bonjour à tous, bonjour à toutes. Je suis vraiment heureuse de passer maintenant à une partie de ce passionnant débat sur l'urgence climatique. Et I'm very delighted to have really the pleasure to welcome a visionary genius working on the path of Leonardo da Vinci. You're Italian, Carlo RATTI. You're an engineer, you're an architect, you're an inventor, you're an entrepreneur. You create startup, and you design the world of tomorrow. And as professor of MIT, you are also director of the MIT Sensitive Cities, as well as teaching in many prestigious universities worldwide, including Harvard, including Politecnico di Torino, Politecnico di Parigi, etc., etc. And you're here because we know that we need your vision, that you need your competence and expertise to see how we can tackle some urgent things. By the way, you are named between the 50 more innovative and important designers in the world. You are the one whose name must be known, etc., etc. I mean, he's very known. You have head of state, governors.
There's a lot of fake news around, so don't trust it. So.
You have head of states, commissioners, governors, mayors, who precious your advice to see how invent another way of urbanism, sustainable, human-centered, and of course, innovative and creative. I could continue for hours. You have done more than 500 publications all around the world. But let me go and straight on the point because we don't have so much time. Please tell us, what is your vision? How would you imagine a new way to tackle the climate change issues between Europe and Africa, and especially at the metropolitan level?
Yeah, thank you, Chiara. Great question. And first of all, great to be here. Sorry, we're switching to English, but I really enjoyed some of the discussions this morning. And I think, cities are core to all what we are discussing. When you think about decarbonizing, well, if you want, just remember 4 numbers about cities. I usually mention them. You remember 3, 55, 75, and 80. Cities are very small on the planet. They're only 3% of the surface of the planet, but they're 55% of the population, 75% of energy consumption, 80% of CO2 emissions. So somehow if we're able to do something to make our cities a little bit more sustainable, then that can be a big deal globally. And then, this is why this is important to what we discussed today. Well, because everybody is saying, well, cities are growing, cities are booming, but pay attention to where they're booming. They are not booming in Europe. In Europe, the urban population is what it is. I think London, just a few years ago, got back to what it was in the early 20th century. If you think about the United States, where I spend most of my time, also cities are not booming at all. Actually, if any of you is interested, I did an article last week in the New York Times where we looked at New York, and New York is actually in a very difficult condition now, especially with the pandemic, what was discussed in the previous session, because it's losing a lot of inhabitants, lost over 300,000 people since the pandemic. So where is it booming? Well, they're booming mostly in one continent, and that's the continent we're discussing today. It's Africa. Somehow Africa is going to be a big chunk of the solution when we look at tomorrow, we look at decarbonization, and when we look at cities. So that's how I would answer this, Chiara.
And concretely, you worked all around the world. You did a lot of projects whenever, especially in big events such world exhibits, etc. What could you imagine would be the right growth of these cities, maybe starting from scratch in Africa?
Yeah, that's...
It's the Western model still a model or not?
Well, I think, here there's a great opportunity. We've all seen over the past few decades how Africa actually was able to leapfrog in different conditions. On the one, the thing that everybody usually refers to is what happened with mobile communication. So basically skipping the technology altogether and actually moving to the next one and then being much ahead than, say, Europe or the United States. If you look at today in some services, if you look at the startup ecosystem in some niches, actually the continent is much ahead than Europe or the United States because exactly of this leapfrogging. And I think what has to happen is the same. We cannot continue to build the same, urban fabric from Toronto, New York, London, Paris, and just, build it everywhere else. from Dubai to Lagos to Nairobi and so on. We cannot, first of all, it's not sustainable. We're building, this building, it don't make any sense. And also there's an issue, I think this issue was mentioned very, very well by a great French philosopher, by Paul Ricoeur. And Paul Ricoeur was concerned at the time, decades ago, are we going to see a world where everything looks the same? He was saying, the same McDonald's everywhere, the same shit everywhere. Well, I think what we need to do is actually find, again, a way to leapfrog. And I think, again, there's a great opportunity to see and to show the world how tomorrow's cities can become more sustainable, originating in the continent.
Putting back the human being in the center of everything. Thank you so much. You stay here. Carlo RATTI, you stay here, and I will leave the floor to Marie-France Révillard with her colleagues coming on the floor. And I cannot see anything, but...
Thank you, Chiara.
Thank you so much.
We can continue talking.
We can continue talking. If there's still not there, we can continue talking.
But that is, I really believe, again, the new lessons are going to emerge. And by the way, something I wanted to mention, as Chiara mentioned, I got different hats, that deal with also with the design we do with the startup ecosystem we created. But one of the key hats is that Professor Temati will run Senseable City Lab. Senseable City Lab, we've been looking at cities, how to leapfrog, how to develop cities in the past 20 years. We kind of were among the first one to develop the space of smart cities. And in the past few years, we started realizing that in order to make change, you need to be in cities themselves. So we are still based in Cambridge, Massachusetts, where MIT is, but we got different labs in different cities. And so we got Dubai, we got Rio, we got Singapore, Amsterdam, Stockholm. And the next thing we want to do, we haven't finalized, we've been having discussions with Lagos, but we haven't finalized, but we certainly want to have a presence in Africa. Because again, that's the thing where the most exciting things in innovation are going to happen in the next few years.
This is a new scoop, and I leave you with this scoop to the panel that will follow up.
Thank you.
To continue conversation.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Chiara.